Behar Bechukotai. The pasuk begins in a very interesting way. And the pasuk tells us if we're going to do the right thing, then we're going to have all kinds of blessings that are going to be conferred upon us. One, it says, "V'nosati mishkani b'seichechem." I'm going to put my mishkan in your midst. And then the pasuk ends off, "V'lo sig'al nafshi eschem," and I will not be disgusted by you. That's very, very interesting. Imagine you tell your wife, I love you, and I will never ever be disgusted by you, by your looks. I love you and I'll never be disgusted by your looks. What is your wife going to say to you? You're done, right? That's it. You're on the couch for a long time. So what's HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying here? If you're going to do the right thing, I'm going to be close to you. I'm going to put my mishkan by you. And not only that, "V'lo sigal nafshi eschem," my soul won't be disgusted by you. So we know that in reality, the relationship that Klal Yisroel has with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a very strong relationship. And there's all kinds of dargas, there's all kinds of levels to relationship. Perhaps the lowest level is just an acquaintance. Somebody that you know, somebody that you bump into every once in a while. And it's very easy to smile and be on our best behavior. Very simple. A stronger relationship is perhaps somebody that you live next to. Right? A neighbor. And with a neighbor, you're required more. There's more that's demanded of you. And sometimes when there's fights between neighbors, it gets a little difficult. But it usually does not get to a point where a person cannot stand the guy at all, where his mom is disgusted by him. It doesn't get to that level. The highest level of a relationship is a relationship between a husband and wife. A husband and wife is the highest level of relationship, where they are two separate people, but they're almost fused into one. In fact, it says that really technically a person cannot become one with another person. The only other being, or the only other power that we could become one with is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It says, Yisroel, v'kutchabrichu v'araisa chadu. Klal Yisroel, kutchabrichu is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, araisa is the Torah, chadu. There we could meld into one. But with a husband and wife, it's actually two separate people, two separate realities, and they live together. And in a sense, what happens in the beginning of a marriage, where a couple, a husband and wife, they ride that wave, that euphoric wave of tremendous romance, where they each feel like they're completely one entity. But as time goes on, they hit a rocky period because they realize that they're not really one. In other words, I am my own individual, she's her own individual, and what ends up happening is each one pulls and says, wait, I am the one. So therefore, they want to hold to that concept of one, of unity, of complete unity, of just taking two people and melding them into one. So they want to hold on to it, but each one feels I'm the one. So each one pulls in the other direction. So if they're able to surmount the rocky period that normally comes after romance, so they will end up having what's called mature love. Which means to say they'll grow into this mature love understanding that you are different than me. We're actually not one. We're very, very different, right? With totally different backgrounds. But I grow to understand and respect the differences between us. And that's mature love, and that's a healthy relationship. Now, however, if the relationship goes sour, and a husband and wife sometimes, chas v'shalom, get divorced, what happens there? It could reach a point of extreme hatred, where all of a sudden the person is disgusted. One spouse is totally disgusted by the other. So it could reach that point. And the Gemara tells us, it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us that, and this is the way the Gemara puts it down, that if a person, the Gemara says, the Gemara is speaking about two people. When I was in love with my wife, the Gemara says, so even a tip of a sword was enough room for me and my wife. We would rest together and be very happy together. On the other hand, when things went south a little bit and we couldn't get along as well, it says even a bed, the Gemara says, of 60 cubits was not enough for us. So when things went well, we enjoyed each other even at the tip of a sword. You'd say we were able to live even in a tiny house and we were still extremely happy. But when things went bad, even a giant house wasn't enough. Right? We weren't in each other's way. Even in a giant house, we stumbled over each other. So that, with that understanding of what love means, that sometimes love has different ups and downs. And sometimes a person could fall out of love completely, where they end up hating the other person. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, a human being, when he gets married, he can never fathom that. You can never tell your bride, I love you so much, but I guarantee you I'll never be disgusted by you. Because that's an insult. Because first of all, nobody really knows. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Klal, so I have the relationship of a marriage with you. And I will guarantee you that as far as you go, even though in reality a human being would be disgusted, after I do so much for you and you completely turn your back, a human being would be disgusted, but I'm guaranteeing you that lo sigal nafshi, I will never be disgusted by you. One of the things that perhaps is the hardest thing to work on and build, and it's interesting, one time I was being Menachem Abel by Alex Roth for his mother, Aleh Shalom. And the Minkatcher Rebbe was there. And the Minkatcher Rebbe was there. I asked the Minkatcher Rebbe, what should I study with my Kehillah? If I have one thing, I can't conquer everything. So what should it be? What should that one thing be? So he sat there like a Hasidic Rebbe, stroking his beard and closing his eyes. And, he stood there for a couple of minutes. And Mom was just thinking back and forth. And then he said, study with them emunah. Out of everything he picked, emunah. And it's interesting, one time also, I went to Rabbi Leib Steinman. So I asked him, I said, sometimes every once in a while I want to imbue the idea of kollel into my people. Not necessarily that they should learn in kollel, but that they should have the chashivas. Right? So he also closed his eyes, and he's thinking and thinking and thinking, and then he tells me, teach him that God exists. I couldn't believe it. I was so shocked. I said, teach him that God exists. I mean, they come to shul. So he says, no, teach him that God exists. And in a way, when I walked out, it really moved me. Because he said such simple words, but they're so profound. Because what does it mean that God exists? You could take it on infinite amount of levels to understand the existence of God. Meaning to say, if we understand totally that God exists, we would always be calm. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is governing the world. There's a famous story just to illustrate what that means. Rabbi Leib Steinman says, if there would be one Maimon, one believer in our generation, we wouldn't have all the problems. So you say to yourself, what do you mean if there would be one believer? And look at you, Rabbi Steinman. What do you mean if there would be one believer? He says, no, if there would be one believer, if there would be one person like Avraham Avinu, he said. If one believer like Avraham Avinu, we wouldn't have problems. Just to understand, Avraham Avinu was on a different level. What does that mean? So, I heard a story to illustrate it. To illustrate it in a way that hits home a little bit. I said this over once. There was an individual that was climbing a mountain. And he was climbing and climbing and climbing. And he's climbing Mount Everest, and in the middle of the way, he notices he doesn't have enough gear to make it all the way to the top. And he doesn't have enough provisions to make it all the way to the top, but he doesn't have enough gear to get back down. It's going to take him 2 weeks to get back down and 2 weeks up, so what does he do? He's in the middle. Now what does he do? So when there's no atheist in the foxhole, he begins to daven to Hashem. He begins to pray, God, please help me out. And he's praying and praying, and all of a sudden he hears a heavenly voice. And the heavenly voice says, my dear son, I see the pain that you're in, and I see the predicament that you're in. Let go of the ropes, and I got your back. And he thinks for a moment, and he looks back up to the heavens, and he says, is there anyone else up there? Is there anybody else that could help me out? Meaning to say, how many people we go through history, how many people will actually let go? So you have Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov will let go. Then how many more people would let go? Right? Just ready to go. Just total trust in Hashem. So me to say, Rabbi Steinman tells me, teach him that there's a Rebbeinu Shalom. We all have to learn that. That's what we'd spend 80, 90 years here in this world to learn that there's a Rebbeinu Shalom in the world. But this was the concept, this is the idea, and the most fundamental idea of Yiddishkeit, the idea of emunah. And you have this parsha, that's how it begins. This parsha is beginning with this concept of emunah. We know the pasuk tells us, "V'nosno ha'aretz pirya, v'achaltem lo soiva, v'yishavtem lo betach aleh." Says comes the Shnas Shmita. Shnas Shmita tells us, listen, "Nosno ha'aretz pirya, the land is going to give fruits, and v'yishavtem lo betach." You're going to sit with a certain security, but you're going to eat, you're going to be completely full. Nothing to worry about. But then the pasuk says, you'll ask, what will we eat in the 7th year? Right? Shemitah. We're not going to gather, we're not going to plant, so what are we going to eat? I'm going to give you an extra bracha on the 6th year. And that bracha is going to be so intense that you're going to have from that 6th year, you're going to have the 6th year, the 7th year, and the 8th year. You're going to have 3 years from it. So, I don't understand. What's going on over here? On one hand, it's telling me that the land will give its fruits, and you're going to eat a little bit, the misbarach b'meyav. It's going to be blessed in your intestines. You can just eat a little bit and it will be blessed in your intestines. You don't even have to eat that much. But then, it tells me, well, what happens if you're going to ask what will be in the 6th year? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll give you food for the 6th, 7th, and 8th. So which one is it? In other words, I'm going to be eating a little bit, and that's going to be misbarach b'meyav. So what do I need? That extra bracha of the 6th year will give me so much food that I won't have to even worry. I'll just look at my storage houses and I got so much that there's nothing to worry about for the next couple of years. So I saw an understanding that there's 2 types of people, 2 types of emunas. There's an emunah that a person has, right? But it's a very simple emunah, meaning to say, of course I believe in God, but on the other hand, I want to work as hard as I can to make the 6-figure income so I could live a certain way. There's another type of emunah that a person knows, listen, I'll have whatever I need. I'll have whatever I need at the end of the day. So here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is catering to both type of Jews. To the Jew that understands, you know what, I'll have whatever I need, right? So him, he says, you're going to have enough. In other words, even if you eat a little bit, it's going to be blessed in your stomach. So don't worry about it. You have a little bit, it's going to be blessed in your stomach. The other one, unless he has the $100,000 in the bank, he may not ever need to use it. But unless he has it, he has no security. He's constantly worried. Where am I going to make my next dollar? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to take care of both Jews in Shemitah. Each one. And you see that nowadays very much. You see people sitting and learning in Kollel. How do they survive? 8, 9 children. How do they survive? It doesn't make sense. Right? People making $100,000, $200,000 are struggling. So how is this Kollel guy surviving? So in a sense, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't say that they're going to survive large. What does it say? Nasati gishmechem beitam v'nasna oretz yevula v'etzasadei ten period. Meaning to say, I'll give the rain at its time. It doesn't say that if you're going to go in the proper way, I'll give you a Lexus and a big house in Mill Basin. It doesn't say that. It says, I'll give you rain in its time. It says, I'll give you sustenance. I'll give you what you need. So a person that understands that he could survive with what he needs, and he doesn't need so much, so he'll have that special bracha, that oichel kima v'nisparach b'meyav. He eats a little bit and he becomes full. The other one will not have that bracha, but he may have the money. So he may feel like he has that security. But at the same time, you ask the Kollel guy, how are you doing? And he's having a good life. He's enjoying it. He's driving an old car, and the only thing in the car that doesn't make noise, perhaps, is the horn, but everything else is noisy, but he's still happy. Doesn't feel like he's missing anything. The other guy's driving his beautiful Lexus, but at the end of the day, he always has that worry. Now, if you think about it, everybody really has trust. Everybody has trust. And I'll prove it to you. Everybody has faith. And I'll prove it to you. You go in the morning, and everybody's going to Manhattan, right? Now, you have to have tremendous faith when you get onto that train. You're trusting that the guy who's driving it had a full night's sleep, and he's not drunk, and he's going to steer the train right, and yet we're very calm. So without faith, everything that goes on throughout our day, we cross the street, we're trusting the guy that he's going to stop, right? The car is coming, but we're trusting that it's going to stop because it's a red light. So in a way, a person is wired with tremendous amount of trust. But when it comes to the Rebbeinu Shalom, what happens? How come we're all of a sudden it's hard for us to trust? What changes that it's hard for us to trust? So in a sense, first of all, there's a big Yetzer Hara. It's a big Yetzer Hara. Why? Because the moment the person trusts completely in Hashem, right? Trusts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. It's complete. He has no doubt. At that moment, the person is mechuyev, he's obligated in all mitzvahs. Right? Why is Judaism much harder than Christianity? Because Christianity, you can go to the Pope and you can ask for forgiveness and everything is done. You pay $50 on Sunday and you're done, right? And that's it. You get forgiven. In Yiddishkeit, yes, of course, there's also this concept of tshuva. But there's 613 mitzvahs that bind you right afterwards. So the moment there's so many mitzvahs that bind you, there the belief is so much stronger. It's so much stronger. When a Christian person says, I believe, it's one level. When a Jewish person says, I believe, at that moment you're bound by 613 mitzvahs. So when you're doing it, you're believing on a much higher level. So certainly a Jew has a much higher level of belief than a guy. But even then, what Rav Steinman is saying is that the levels are infinity. The levels are infinity. And where do we see it? We see it at this guy that's in the middle of the mountain. He's right in the middle. How many people will let go? So we see the levels of emunah are countless. Therefore, a person has to work his entire life on the idea of emunah. When a person believes, automatically a person doesn't have any more pressure. You look at some of the Gedolim. It's not like they're smiling all day. Yeah, you see a guy smiling all day. That's stam an imbecile. He has a fool. So you see a certain level of tranquility in a person's mind, right? When you look at Rav Chaim Kanievsky, you see a certain level of just peace, right? It's amazing just to watch. Whenever I go to Yisroel, I come to get a bracha from him. So I look at his face, and you see there's just inner tranquility. And you say, wow, here's what a total maimon looks like. This is what it looks like. This is the picture. This is the feeling. You can't really see it in a picture, but you could see it when you're in front of a person. But that's something that we could always work on. And every step we conquer on emunah is a tremendous step forward. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at the end of the day, He believes in each one of us. Any time we get up in the morning, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I thank you. Why? Because you trusted. HaKadosh Baruch Hu trusts and believes in us that today we are going to do well. But if we fail, you may believe in us another day. So every single day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu lets us live, He believes in us. And that's the idea. Leisigal nafshi eschem. I will never reject you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. I have patience and have patience and have patience. As much as you drift, I know one day you could come back. So we should be zeicha the rest of our lives to work on this concept of emunah. Now we work on emunah, we will realize that the wife we're supposed to have, that's the only wife that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set for us. We believe in it. The children, we believe in it. The environment, we believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you are running the world. And with that, a person can never be sad. Every day of his life is another day in paradise. And Be'ez Hashem, we should be zeicha to constantly climb towards that level. So every day in our lives will be another day in paradise. Amen.